Hi everyone, this is William from the Headphone Experience, and I just wanted to start out tonight by saying thank you to all my viewers. This YouTube channel, the Headphone Experience, hit 100,000 views about 2 days ago, and I couldn't have done that without all of you, so I wanted to say thank you for everyone who has supported me by watching my videos, by subscribing to my channel, and those of you who have purchased the Headphone Experience t-shirts, sweatshirts, coffee mugs. There is a link under this video in the comments if you would wish to do so. So anyway, that helps me, cover the cost of shipping back, loaned equipment, that sort of thing. So, this I monetized a couple months ago and just, starting to get a little bit of money coming in, but still in the negative at this point. So anyway, I want to get back to the point of this video. This is a comparison between the Beyerdynamic T1 second generation and the Kennerton Magni. These are two headphones that I really like, and they're similar in a lot of ways and a little bit different in a few. So this isn't necessarily a shootout. I'm not trying to determine a winner because like I said, I really like both of these headphones. I just wanted to point out the differences and the similarities and let you make the choice which you think would be the best for you based on those things. So anyway, I'll start out by showing you both of these. This is the Beyerdynamic T1 second generation, and I did a full review on this about a week and a half ago. And this is the Kennerton Magni, and I did a full review on this a couple months ago, so you can go back and look at either of those to get more details. Anyway, the Beyerdynamic T1 is made in Germany. The Magni is made in Russia by Kennerton Audio. The T1 currently retails at $9.99. That's their price through Beyerdynamic, but they can be found just about anywhere on Amazon for about $7.99 right now, and I've seen them even lower, maybe $7.29. So the Magni comes in at real close to the same price that currently sells for $7.69. The Beyerdynamic T1 is a wired, full-size, over-the-ear, semi-open-back design, and the Magni is a wired, full-size, over-the-ear, closed-back design. They both use dynamic drivers. Big difference is the impedance. The T1 has an impedance of 600 ohms and the Magni has an impedance of 33.7 ohms. The sensitivity listed on the T1 is 102 decibels at 1 milliwatt, and the Magni has a sensitivity of 105 decibels at 1 milliwatt. The weight, according to my kitchen scale, and these are both pretty close to the claimed weights, the T1 weighs in at 358 grams and the Magni weighs in at 448 grams. They both come with cables that have a 6.3 millimeter single-ended plug at the amp end, and they both use 3.5 millimeter connections at the headphone end, one for each ear cup. They both use that. They're not necessarily interchangeable though, because the Magni, which the plug is mounted sort of flush, you can use just about any cable, where on the T1 the 6.5 millimeter connections are a little recessed and you have to have a cable with a small enough casing to fit into the recession there. Otherwise it won't go in entirely. I wanted to talk about build and materials a little bit. The T1, the build quality looks very good. I have absolutely no issues with the build quality. They use aluminum yokes, they use a synthetic leather headband. The ear pads have memory foam on the inside and a velour material on the outside. The ear cups are some sort of plastic resin. They have a very fine mesh sort of metal screen grill on them. And the build quality is real good. The materials, the plastic, the fake leather, all that comes across as slightly cheap to me, but like I said, it's put together very well. I have no issues with the build quality at all. They're solid, and I think it's a design that's going to last a long time. The Magni, that looks quite a bit different, uses a stretch headband instead of the click adjustments. And the padding on the headband is covered with a real lambskin leather. The ear pads are real lambskin leather. The metal is kind of a spring, the headband is kind of a spring metal type of thing. And then the wood cups, or the ear cups themselves, are a solid wood. I believe these are oak, and they could possibly be walnut, I'm not sure. And the back plate, I believe, is aluminum, and I think I mentioned that the ear pads are lambskin leather. Once again, the build quality is excellent, and as far as materials, I have to say I do prefer these, the wooden cups, the real leather, all that. I kind of leaning towards the Kennerton on materials and all that. I'm not crazy about the solid grills. It is a closed back headphone. In fact, the Fisher Audio M12S, I think that's what it's called. Anyway, they are similar, but they use a grill, and I actually kind of like the way the grill looks better. But anyway, it's still a good looking headphone. As far as comfort, the Bear is very light at 358 grams. This is an exceptionally light headphone for a full size. The clamping pressure is real easy. It's tight enough they don't fall off, but it doesn't squeeze on my head. And the ear cups, or the ear pads, are comfortable. The head strap's comfortable. I can barely feel these on my head, so I mean, these are excellent as far as I'm concerned with the comfort factor. The Kennerton is a little bit heavier, about 90 grams heavier, but to be honest, they don't really feel heavier to me. The ear cups are very soft, lambskin leather, very comfortable. The head strap is comfortable, and the weight distribution is real good. And like I said, they're a little bit heavier, but they don't actually feel heavier to me. Once again, the clamping force is just about perfect. They don't squeeze on my head, but they don't fall off or move around. And to be honest, I consider the comfort on both of these to be excellent. I did want to talk a little bit about the equipment that I use comparing these two. And basically what I did, and I don't have two identical amps to hook them both up to at the same time, so I had to hook them each up to an amp. I put them side by side and just switch back and forth. I mean, probably 200 times I switched back and forth over several hours of comparison. And what I did is I used the same source for both of them, which was, excuse me, it's hot and dry in here. I heat with wood, so if I have to stop and get a drink every once in a while, please excuse me for that. Anyway, I'm using the same source for both, which is a Cambridge Audio CD player as a transport only, running a digital signal to a Benchmark Media DAC1, and then that has two analog outputs, which I'm running one to a head amp GSX Mini and the other to a Audio GD Master 9. And I realize these amps aren't identical, but they differ more in features and that sort of thing than they do in actual sound. They're actually, to my ear, they're pretty close in sound. So what I did is I hooked one up to the head amp, the other to the Audio GD, and compared them for a while back and forth, and then I switched to the opposite amps, to give them both a chance with each amp. And I did use, even though these both come with a single-ended cable, I did use a 4-pin XLR cable and ran off the balanced outputs of both of these amps to get the best possible output I could. As far as music, I use a variety of everything from classic rock to pop to electronic to some acoustical, a little bit of orchestral music. and you know, just ran a variety through them and to see, you know, because some headphones are just really good with some music and others aren't that good, you know. I mean, others work better with other music. So anyway, so getting into my comparison, first thing I wanted to talk about was amping, because the Kennerton at only 33 ohms and 105 decibels at 1 milliwatt is very, very easy to drive. I mean, I would assume just about any portable could drive them. It takes almost nothing. Any amp is going to work with them. The T1, on the other hand, is a 600 ohm headphone, which is about as high as they get. The sensitivity is a little bit lower at 102 decibels. Excuse me, and it is quite a bit harder to drive. It takes more amp. It's not extremely hard. I would say it's moderately hard because of the high impedance, but relatively sensitive. So it's kind of medium hard, but definitely takes a lot more amp to drive than the Magni does. The T1, you know, needs a little bit of power. I'd recommend something with a couple watts of output for that. But it actually works very well, exceptionally well, with the Felix Audio Echo Tube amp, which is an OTL type amp, and I think that's rated at, I don't know, I think it's under 1 watt, and they actually sound fantastic with that. So, but the Magni, you can run those with pretty much any amp you want. Getting into the tone balance, I would say the T1 it has a little bit of a V shape to the tone balance, a little bit of emphasis in the bass, a little bit of emphasis in the treble, with the mid-range set back a little bit, and I would say it's moderately on the warm side of neutral. The Kennerton Magni, I would say, is just about dead neutral as far as tone balance, and really no emphasis anywhere. And I would say it's just slightly, the mid-ranges is slightly on the warm side of neutral. As far as frequency extension, on the bottom end, I would say the T1 is very good. It goes very low. And I would say the Magni is excellent. Goes very, very low into the sub bass. And at the top end, I would say they both do about an equal job. They both do a very good job of going up into the treble as high as I can hear either one of them. So, you know, but very good frequency extension on both headphones. Getting into, you know, the different parts of the tone, I would say, starting with sub bass, the T1 has very good sub bass. It does reach very low, and it's solid and it's tight, and you know, it sounds good. It's really good. The Magni has exceptional sub bass. Probably the best sub bass I've ever heard from any headphone. Just goes very low. It's not overwhelming. It's not in your face, but it's there, and it goes just very, very low, very clean, very tight, and I love the sub bass on the Magni. Getting into the mid bass, where the Magni is just pretty much neutral and it's balanced. The mid bass is very good on the Magni, but it's not emphasized at all. It doesn't jump out at you. The T1 has a little bit of emphasis in the sub bass, so it has a little more weight to the sub bass, a little more punch to the sub bass. Still very tight, very clean, but just a little bit more to it. You know, it hits a little bit harder than the Magni does in the mid bass. Getting into the mids, I would describe the T1. The mids are a little bit set back. They're, you know, not as emphasized, where the treble and the bass are a little emphasized. The mids are a little bit lower range, which sets them back a little bit. And I would say they're moderately on the warm side of being neutral. Just very warm, very lush, very, they've got a lot of weight to the mids. Just smooth, creamy sound, beautiful mids. It's just about as good as they get. And the mids on the Magni are a little bit more even with the bass and treble. They're you know, stepped up a little bit and a little bit more up front. They're a little bit closer to your face. They sound a little bit closer, and the mids are exceptionally clean and clear on the Magni, and but once again, I would say they're on slightly on the warm side of neutral, very, very smooth, and you know, just very high quality mids. I love the mids on the Magni too. Both are great. The you know, the T1's a little bit warmer and a little bit more set back. The treble is pretty much equal. They both are very clean, very clear. They both have good sparkle, and they both have good extension. It might be, the treble might be emphasized slightly more on the T1 than the Magni, but they're very close. They're not that far apart. Getting into detail and resolution, the T1 has very good detail and resolution all the way through the frequency band. The mid-range is set back a little bit, and sometimes the mid-range sounds a little bit distant. It's not lacking detail, but the details aren't in your face because they're set back a little bit. The Magni, in comparison, the mid-range is more forward, and the mid-range is exceptionally clean, and the detail and resolution is exceptional on the Magni. As far as comparing to other headphones, I can't think of another headphone at any price that brings out more detail and more resolution in the mid frequencies. The Magni is outstanding at that. It's on the verge of being analytical. I mean, it is going to pull out every detail through the mid-range, where the T1 is very, very good, but not on the level of the Magni as far as extracting detail in the mid-range and lower treble. Female vocals, which, you know, hit in the mid-range, they both sound very smooth, very, you know, just kind of a creamy, rich sound. They're a little bit warmer on the T1 and a little bit more distant, where on the Magni they're a little bit up closer to you, a little bit more pronounced, and just slightly cleaner. They're still warm on the warm side of neutral, but the female vocals, I'm just hearing a little bit more detail than I do on the T1. The T1 female vocals are beautiful on both of these headphones. Like I said, the T1 female vocals come across as being a little bit warmer, and the Magni, they just come across as being I hear a little bit more detail in their voices. Imaging is very good on the T1, very distinct, very good separation between the instruments, and I would say it's even a little bit better on the Magni. The imaging is exceptional on the Magni. I mean, I can just pinpoint exactly where everything's coming from. The sound stage, I would say the T1 has a slightly wider and a slightly deeper sound stage than the Magni. It's slightly wider because of being a semi-open back, where the Magni is a closed, and that does narrow down the sound stage a little bit on the Magni. So the T1, not that the Magni has a small sound stage, I would consider it kind of medium, and the T1 has a slightly wider and slightly deeper sound stage, and I think the reason for the depth is because, number one, the mids are set back a little bit, which makes vocals sound a little more distant, and also the drivers are set to the front of the ear cups and angled back, and I think that helps create a little bit of depth to the sound stage also. But I do think that the Magni has a little more height to the sound stage. I think I'm hearing more sounds down low and up here from the Magni. As far as dynamics, it kind of goes both ways on these. I would say the T1 is a little more dynamic in the mid bass. The mid bass definitely has a little more punch and hits a little bit harder than on the Magni. But on the Magni, I would say the mid range and lower treble is probably more dynamic. things like piano notes, things like that. Something I definitely did notice is snare drums sound a lot punchier, and just the attack is a lot more, it's harder. It just has a stronger attack, and just just hits harder than it does on the T1. The T1, they're a little bit on the soft side, but snare drums are just really just real snappy with the Magni. So I would say the Magni is more dynamic in the mids, probably into the low trebles, where the T1 is more dynamic in the mid bass. Excuse me a second. Something I did want to talk about. Well, let me talk about isolation first. Isolation is the ability for a headphone to block out outside noise, and for that headphone to let in, or not let, I'm sorry, let me start over. Okay. Isolation would be the ability to block outside noise from coming in, or inside noises from the music from getting out. Okay, the Magni is a closed back, so it's definitely going to win in that category. The Magni does a very good job of keeping outside noise out, and it holds the sound in. I can listen to the Magni late at night with someone sleeping a couple feet away from me, and they can barely hear, anything. The T1, being a semi-open back, does leak a little bit of sound. It lets a little bit in, not as much as a full open back would, but it does let a little bit of sound in and does let a little bit out. As far as forgiveness, and what I mean by that is the headphone forgiving of less than perfect recordings. And I would say because of the more laid back, softer mid-range, I would say the T1 is the more forgiving of the two. You can listen to just about anything with the T1, even far from perfect recordings, and it's not going to bring out those imperfections, where the Magni, with a more forward mid-range, more detail in the mid-range, is going to bring out those defects in a recording. Something I did notice is if a recording has any background hiss in it, and I'm not talking about sound from the amp or anything like that, I'm talking about just the recording itself. Some studios are just going to have a little bit of a background hiss in them, and a lot of music does. The T1 is exceptionally good at not bringing out that background hiss in a recording. So if it's there, you're probably not going to hear it with the T1. The Magni, like I said, being a bit on the analytical side and being able to bring all the detail, if there's a background hiss in the recording, it's going to bring it out. You're going to hear it. So the Magni is less forgiving, less than perfect recordings than the T1 is. As far as musicality, I would say the T1 is about as good as they get. It just sounds, everything just sounds so musical, so natural, so real. But to be honest, the Magni is not far behind it, just slightly behind it in that category. So what it comes down to, I'm not going to pick a winner because I actually love both of these headphones. I actually selected the Magni as the best deal of 2019 as far as the most headphone for the dollar, and I did that because I think the Magni can hold its own against headphones of just about any price. I mean, I'm not going to say it's the best headphone in the world, but it's $769. I think it holds its own against $2,000 and $3,000 headphones. Okay, I had never heard the T1 until a couple weeks ago, and to me the T1 is right up there with the Magni. They're very close. I really, really like both of these headphones, so I'm not going to tell you one is better than the other because that comes down to your taste and what you want. So that was the purpose of this video, because they're both about the same price. One's from Germany, one's from Russia, all that. One's a little easier to drive. I would say if you've got, if you've got the amp, the T1 is, definitely going to be a good choice, but you need a little bit more amp with the T1. If you're, on a budget amp, the Magni is probably the way to go. But as far as the sound, these are two very similar headphones with some slight differences, and I would say the strengths of the T1 are, well, number one, if you like your headphone with a little bit of V-shape and a little bit of emphasis to the bass, then you might like the T1 better. It's got a little bit more hit to the mid-bass and slightly more, emphasis to the treble than the Magni does. The Magni is more neutral. If you're looking for a very neutral, very accurate headphone with no dips or, anything missing in the tone balance, probably the Magni is a better choice. The T1 is a little bit warmer than the Magni. If you're looking for a warm headphone, that you can listen to just about any kind of music, it's going to be very forgiving of less than perfect recordings. The T1 is ideal. The Magni isn't as forgiving, but the Magni, its strong points is it has exceptional detail and clarity through the mids and lower treble. And to be honest, going back and forth between the two, when I go from the T1 to the Magni, when I jump between the two, and to be honest, my brain adjusts very fast. I can put on either of these headphones and within a couple minutes they both sound perfect to me. But when I jump back and forth, I do hear a difference, and when I jump from the T1 to the Magni can sound slightly thin, just a little bit thinner, a little bit less weight to the bass. But the Magni sounds more, I hear better clarity and more detail in the mid-range. Okay, when I take the Magni off and switch back to the T1, the mid-range, for a first couple minutes actually sounds slightly veiled to me. Not much, just a little tiny bit. It just doesn't have quite the clarity or detail that the Magni does in the mid-range and lower treble, but it just has this extremely pleasant, musical, natural sound to it that, is just incredibly enjoyable. And to be honest, like I said, within a couple minutes of listening, either one of these headphones sounds pretty much perfect to me. They're both extremely enjoyable. The T1, slightly bassier, slightly warmer. The Magni, slightly, it's more neutral, a little more accurate, and has a little bit better detail. But almost on the verge of analytical at a time, but analytical in a good way. It never gets harsh or sibilant or anything like that. And that's the case with both of these headphones. I've never heard anything harsh or sibilant out of either headphone. And even though they both have, real good treble with good extension and good sparkle, neither one of them ever gets harsh in the treble either. So, to be honest, I love both of these headphones, and I don't think you can lose with either one. But there are some slight differences, and that's why I'm here to help you make that choice. So I'm going to wrap this up. Once again, this is William from the Headphone Experience. If this video has helped you, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel, and you are all welcome to join us over at the Headphone Experience on Facebook. Thank you.